Chapter 14. The Triumph of the Witch. As soon as the witch had gone, Aslan said, "We must move from this place at once. It will be wanted for other purposes. We shall encamp tonight at the fords." Of course, everyone was dying to ask him how he arranged the matters with the witch. After a meal, which was taken in the open air on the hilltop, they were busy for a while taking the pavilion down and packing things up. Before 2 o'clock, they were on the march and set off in a northeasterly direction. During the first part of the journey, Aslan explained to Peter his plan for the campaign. As soon as she had finished her business in these parts, he said, the witch and her crew will almost certainly fall back to her house and prepare for a siege. You may or may not be able to cut her off and prevent her from reaching it. He then went on to outline 2 plans of battle. You must put your sentries in such a place, or you must post scouts to see that she doesn't do so and so, till at last Peter said, "But you will be there yourself, Aslan." "I can give you no promise of that," answered the lion, and he continued giving Peter his instructions. For the last part of the journey it was Susan and Lucy who saw most of him. He did not talk very much, and seemed to them to be sad. It was still afternoon when they came down to a place where the river valley had widened out, and the river was broad and shallow. This was the fords of Verona, and Aslan gave orders to halt on the side of the water. But Peter said, "Won't it be better to camp on the far side, for fear she should try a night attack or anything?" Aslan, who seemed to have been thinking about something else, roused himself with a shake. "Huh? What's that?" Peter said it all over again. "No," said Aslan. "No, she will not make an attack at night." And then he sighed deeply. "All the same, it was well thought of. That is how a soldier ought to think. But it doesn't really matter." So they proceeded to pitch their camp. Aslan's mood affected everyone that evening. Peter was feeling uncomfortable too at the idea of fighting the battle on his own. The news that Aslan might not be there had come as a great shock to him. Supper that evening was a quiet meal. Everyone felt how different it had been since the last night, and even that morning. It was as if the good news, having just begun, were already drawing at their end. This feeling affected Susan as much as she couldn't get to sleep when she went to bed. And after that, counting sheep and turning over and over again, she heard Lucy give a long sigh and turn over just beside her in the darkness. "Can't you get to sleep either?" said Susan. "No," said Lucy. "I thought you were asleep." "What?" "I've got a most horrible feeling, as if something were hanging over us." "Have you? Because as a matter of fact, so have I." "Something about Aslan," said Lucy. "Either some dreadful thing is going to happen to him, or something dreadful that he's going to do. There's been something wrong with him all afternoon." "Lucy, what was that he said about not being with us at the battle? You don't think he could be stealing away and leaving us tonight, do you?" "Where is he now?" said Lucy. "Is he here in the pavilion?" "I don't think so." "Susan, let's go outside and have a look around. We might see him." "All right, let's," said Susan. "We might as well be doing something as lying here awake." Very quietly the 2 girls got their way among the other sleepers and crept out of the tent. The moonlight was bright, and everything was quite still except for the noise of the river chattering over the stones. Then Susan suddenly caught Lucy's arm and said, "Look, on the far side of the camp." Without a word they both followed him. He led them up the steep slope, apparently by the same route which they had used that afternoon coming down from the stone table. It was no good trying to run away, so they came towards him. When they were closer, he said, "Oh, children, children, why are you following me?" "We couldn't sleep," said Lucy, and then felt sure that she need say no more words, and that Aslan knew all they had been thinking. "Please, may we come with you, wherever you're going?" asked Susan. "Well," said Aslan, and seemed to be thinking. Then he said, "I should be glad of company tonight. Yes, you may come, if you will promise to stop when I tell you, and after that leave me and go on alone." "Oh, thank you, and we will," said the girls. Forward they went, and one of the girls walked on each side of the lion. But how slowly he walked, and his great royal head drooped so that his nose nearly touched the grass. He stumbled and gave a low moan. "Aslan, dear Aslan," said Lucy, "what is wrong? Can't you tell us?" "Are you ill, dear Aslan?" asked Susan. "No," said Aslan. "I'm sad and lonely. Lay your hands on my mane so that I can feel you are there, and let us walk like that." And so the girls did they would never have dared to do without permission. But what they have longed to do ever since they first saw him, buried their cold hands in the beautiful sea of fur and stroked it, and so doing walking with him. And then they saw that they were going with him up the slope of the hill on which the stone table stood. They went on the side where the trees came further up, and when they got to the last tree, Aslan stopped and said, "Oh, children, children, have you must stop, and whatever happens, do not let yourselves be seen. Farewell." And both the girls cried bitterly, and clung to the lion and kissed his mane and his nose and his paws. Then he turned from them and walked out on the top of the hill, and Lucy and Susan, crouching in the bushes, looked after him. And this is what they saw. A great crowd of people were standing all around the stone table, and though the moon was shining, many of them carried torches, which buried with evil-looking red flames and black smoke. But such people, ogres, wolves, bull-headed men, spirits of evil trees, poisonous plants, and creatures who I wouldn't dare describe, because if I did, the grown-ups would probably not let you read this book. In fact, here, with all these who were on the witch's side, and whom the wolf had mentioned at her command. And right in the middle, standing by the table, was the witch herself. A howl and a gibber of dismay went up from the creatures when they first saw the great lion pacing towards them, and for a moment even the witch herself to be struck with fear. Then she recovered herself and gave a fierce laugh. "The fool!" she cried. "The fool has come! Behind him fast!" Lucy and Susan hold their breath, waiting for Aslan's roar and his spring, but it never came. 4 hags, grinning and leering, yet also hanging back and half afraid of what they had to do, had to approach him. "Bind him, I say!" repeated the White Witch. The hags made a dart at him and shrieked with triumph when they found that he had no resistance at all. Then others, evil dwarfs and apes, rushed in to help him, and between them they rolled the huge lion over on his back and tied up all 4 paws together, shouting and cheering as they had done something brave, though the lion had chosen one of their paws could have been the death of him. But he made no noise, even when the enemies strained and tugged, pulled the cords so tight that they cut into his flesh. Then they began to drag him towards the stone table. "Stop," said the witch. "Let him first be shaved." Another roar of mean laughter went up. Snip, snip, snip went the shears, and masses of curling gold began to fall to the ground. Then the ogres stood back at the children, and the children, watching from their hiding place, could see the face of Aslan, looking all small and different without its mane. The enemies all saw the difference. "Why, he's only a great cat after all!" cried one. "Is that what we were afraid of?" said another. And they surged round Aslan, jeering at him and saying things like, "Puss, puss, poor pussy! And how many mice have you caught today, cat? And would you like a saucer of milk?" "Oh, how can they?" said Lucy. "The brutes, the brutes!" For now that their first shock was over, the scorned face of Aslan looked to be braver and more peaceful and more patient than ever. "Muzzle him," said the witch. And even now, as they worked about his face, putting on the muzzle, one bite from his jaw would have cost 2 or 3 of them their hands. But he never moved, and this seemed to enrage all that rabble. Everyone was at once with him now. Those who had been afraid to come near him, even after he had been bound, began to find their courage, and for a few minutes the 2 girls could not even see him, so thickly was surrounded by the whole crowd of creatures, kicking back, hitting him, spitting on him, jeering at him. At last the rabble had been enough of this. They began to drag the bound and muzzle lion to the stone table, some pulling and some pushing. It was so huge that even when they got him there, it took all the effort to hoist him onto the surface. Then there was more tying and tethering of cords. "The cowards! The cowards!" sobbed Susan. "Are they still afraid of him even now?" When once Aslan had been tied on the flat stone, a hush fell over the crowd. 4 hags holding 4 torches stood at the corners of the table. The witch bared her arms as she had bared them the previous night when it had been Edmund instead of Aslan. Then she began to whet her knife. It looked to the children, when the gleam of the torchlight fell on it, as if the knife were made of stone, not of steel, and it was of strange and evil shape. At last she drew near. She stood by Aslan's head. Her face was working and twitching with passion, but as looking up at the sky, still quiet, neither angry nor afraid, but a little sad. Then just before she gave the bow, she stopped down and said in a quivering voice, "And now who has won? Fool, did you think that by all this you would save the human traitor? Now I will kill you instead of him, as our impact was, and so deep magic was appeased. But when you are dead, what will you prevent me from killing him as well? And who will take him out of my hand then? Understand, you have given me Narnia forever. You have lost your own life, and you have not saved this." In that knowledge, despair and die. The children did not see the actual moment of the killing. They couldn't bear to look, and had covered their eyes.